Have you ever believed that a random timid plea for leftover food could unravel a 22-year-old buried secret, mend a mother's lifelong broken heart, and expose the ugly greed lurking behind glamorous elite lives? Today's deeply moving true-to-life tale is exactly that kind of fate-defying story. It shatters every stereotype we hold about poverty, status, and human worth. And it's why I wanted to share this raw emotional story with all of you on my Inner Monologue channel. It all started in an upscale, fancy restaurant where wealthy guests dined on exquisite seafood and fine bread, surrounded by luxury and privilege. A young homeless girl named Lucy mustered up every ounce of her courage to approach a refined, elegant woman, Mrs. Montenegro. Starving and exhausted, she hadn't eaten a single decent bite in 3 whole days. Trembling with embarrassment and fear of being rejected or humiliated, she shyly asked if she could have the untouched bread and half portion of fish left on the woman's table. Almost instantly, she backed down, stammering repeated apologies for disturbing a stranger, too used to being turned away, scorned, and treated like a nuisance by everyone around her. Before Lucy could turn to leave in defeat, a restaurant staff member stepped forward, ready to escort the vagrant girl outside, and even threatened to call security to remove her. In the eyes of most people in that upscale dining room, a homeless stranger begging for scraps was nothing but an eyesore, a disruption to their perfect, luxurious lunch. But what happened next stunned everyone present. Mrs. Montenegro, the powerful, respected elite figure in the room, stopped the staff cold. She declared Lucy her personal guest, ordered the team to pull out a clean chair, set up a brand new formal table setting, and insisted on treating this desperate stranger with the dignity every human being deserves. Lucy was utterly bewildered. For 8 long months, she'd survived on the streets, scavenging for discarded food, hiding from strangers, and enduring endless contempt, insults, and disgust from society. No one had ever looked at her like a human being, let alone seated her at a noble's dining table and cater to her needs. She kept apologizing, urging the woman not to go out of her way, pointing out that other diners were staring and judging them harshly. She'd spent so long being discarded and devalued that she'd genuinely convinced herself she was worthless, a burden to everyone around her. Mrs. Montenegro's gentle yet firm words cut through Lucy's self-loathing in an instant. She asked the girl's name, then pressed her staff to bring out the restaurant's finest offerings one after another: freshly caught premium fish, simmered homemade soup, warm oven, baked bread, rich chocolate dessert, fresh squeezed juice, and clean water. She refused to let Lucy settle for leftovers, stating firmly that her guest deserved a proper, full meal, not scraps cast aside by others. When Lucy finally worked up the courage to ask why a wealthy, influential stranger would go to such lengths for a nobody street kid, Mrs. Montenegro shared a quiet, profound truth. Decades ago, she too had been starving, not for food, but for warmth, kindness, and genuine human connection. The precious things money could never buy. It's a lesson many privileged people never learn. Material wealth can buy fine meals and fancy houses, but it can never fill the emptiness of a lonely soul. As they talked, Lucy slowly opened up about her painful life, raised in a lonely orphanage. She'd been told her entire life that she was an abandoned, unwanted baby with no one in the world to care for her. She'd clung to hope through hardship, devouring every tattered old book in the orphanage's tiny library over and over again, dreaming of becoming a teacher to help other kids find hope through reading. She'd studied relentlessly, earned a college scholarship, and was set to be the first orphan from her home to graduate and build a new life for herself. But cruel reality shattered all her dreams. She fell for a man named Ramon in college, who faked love and loyalty to manipulate her into signing risky loan documents under the pretense of building a future together. Once he'd secured all the borrowed money, he vanished without a trace, leaving Lucy drowning in insurmountable debt she could never repay. She lost her scholarship, her apartment, her reputation, and every last bit of stability. Hunted by debt collectors, she was forced onto the streets, trapped in an endless cycle of hunger, fear, and isolation, for 8 brutal months. Midway through their heartfelt conversation, a snobbish wealthy diner interrupted their peaceful meal, furious that a homeless girl was sharing the same dining space. The woman threatened to boycott the restaurant entirely, complaining that she paid premium prices for a luxurious dining experience, not to eat beside a street vagrant. What followed was a powerful, eye-opening speech from Mrs. Montenegro that perfectly exposes the true nature of poverty in our world. She revealed that she owns the entire building, the adjacent land, and all the surrounding high-end hotels, including the very space the restaurant occupies. Then she laid bare the harsh truth: real poverty is never the emptiness of your wallet. It's the poverty of the heart, the lack of kindness, empathy, and dignity. This hungry, humble young girl had more integrity and grace in her smallest finger than all the judgmental, jewel-adorned, arrogant elites in that room combined. She told the disgruntled diner plainly that if the sight of a desperate human seeking kindness ruined her meal, the door was wide open for her to leave, and no one would regret her departure. After witnessing such unwavering kindness and defense from a total stranger, Lucy broke down in tears. For years, the world had only shown her cruelty, making her believe she was worthless, unlovable, and a burden to society. But in that moment, a stranger saw her humanity, valued her existence, and fought for her dignity, without a single selfish motive. Moved deeply by Lucy's pure, resilient soul and her heartbreaking life story, Mrs. Montenegro made an impulsive yet heartfelt proposal. She lived alone in a massive empty mansion filled with dusty, unused rooms, tired of spending every night eating dinner in total loneliness. She invited Lucy home with her, just for one night, to enjoy a warm shower, clean clothes, and a soft bed. She promised Lucy full freedom. If she wanted to leave the next day, no one would stop her. Lucy was hesitant and wary, terrified of being a burden or taking advantage of the kind woman. She warned Mrs. Montenegro that she was a stranger, that she could be dishonest or dangerous, questioning why someone with immense status and wealth would ever trust a street beggar. Yet Mrs. Montenegro's intuition told her their meeting was no accident. There was a familiar warmth in Lucy's eyes, a hidden bond she couldn't explain, a sign that fate had deliberately brought them together. What happened after they arrived at the grand mansion is the plot twist no one could see coming, the hidden fate that had bound their lives for 22 years. Behind closed doors, Mrs. Montenegro had spent decades haunted by unbearable grief. 22 years prior, her 6-month-old baby daughter Valentina had fallen severely ill with a high fever on a rainy night. The hospital had officially declared the infant dead, crushing Mrs. Montenegro's world completely. She'd grieved her lost child every single day for over 2 decades, trapped in endless sorrow and loneliness in her oversized empty home. Unable to let go of her daughter's memory, she'd spent years secretly investigating the baby's sudden death. Always sensing something was wrong with the official story, she finally tracked down Dolores Rios, the nurse who'd cared for her daughter that fateful night. After a long search, she found the terminally ill nurse, who was dying of late-stage cancer and clinging to life only to clear her decades-old conscience. The nurse's confession uncovered a horrific family betrayal, rooted entirely in greed and inheritance. Mrs. Montenegro's brother-in-law Augusto had bribed her with a massive sum of money to kill the infant Valentina. If the child lived, she would inherit the family's massive fortune. If she died, Augusto would claim all the wealth for himself. The nurse couldn't bring herself to harm a helpless baby, so she chose a merciful alternative. She abandoned the healthy infant at a distant orphanage, under a false name, giving the child a chance to survive. The orphanage where she left the baby, St. Rose's Children's Home, the exact orphanage where Lucy had grown up her entire life. To confirm this earth-shattering truth, Mrs. Montenegro ordered a discreet DNA test. The results were definitive, 99.9% certainty, that Lucy, the homeless street girl who'd begged for her leftovers, was her long-lost daughter Valentina, the child she'd grieved and searched for 22 long years. The mother-daughter reunion was overflowing with tears, relief, and unimaginable heartache. Lucy finally understood why she'd always felt unwanted. She'd never been abandoned by a loving mother. She'd been stolen, ripped away from her family by a greedy relative's cruel scheme. For 2 decades, a mother had cried and prayed for her every night, while she suffered cold winters, empty stomachs, and endless abuse on the streets alone. Just as their hard-won happiness began to take root, darkness crept in once again. The greedy Uncle Augusto and Lucy's toxic ex-boyfriend Ramon formed a malicious alliance to destroy their newfound bond. Ramon, who'd ruined Lucy's life with fraudulent loans and abandonment, teamed up with Augusto to plot a cruel scheme. They planned to plant fake letters, doctored photos, and paid false witness statements to convince Mrs. Montenegro that Lucy's entire encounter was a calculated scam. They wanted her to believe Lucy had always known her true identity, had faked her homelessness and hunger, and had manipulated her way into the family solely for wealth and inheritance. Their plan preyed on Mrs. Montenegro's deepest vulnerability. After 22 years of betrayal and loss, she was terrified her miracle reunion was too good to be true. Doubt slowly crept into her heart, creating distance between her and Lucy, heartbroken and confused by her mother's sudden coldness. Lucy prepared to leave, believing she was never truly loved or wanted. She insisted she'd never cared about the family's money. All she'd ever wanted was a mother's love. In that painful moment, Mrs. Montenegro snapped out of her fear-induced delusion. She realized that no con artist would ever walk away from billions of dollars for a simple hug. No scammer would carry a pure, resilient heart after years of suffering. She begged for Lucy's forgiveness for letting paranoia and fear blind her love, vowing to uncover the truth and punish everyone who'd slandered and hurt her daughter. With the nurse's signed, notarized confession and recorded audio of Augusto's criminal order as irrefutable evidence, the full truth finally came to light. The police were called to the mansion, and both Augusto and Ramon were arrested on multiple serious charges: child kidnapping, fraud, perjury, slander, and attempted murder. Faced with undeniable proof of his crimes, the arrogant uncle still refused to acknowledge Lucy's worth, dismissing her as a worthless street orphan, unworthy of the Montenegro name. Lucy's final words to him are the most powerful takeaway of this entire story. She admitted she'd grown up poor, hungry, and discarded on the streets. But those hardships taught her the greatest truth in life. Money and status never define a person's value. A kind, honest, compassionate heart is the only true wealth that matters. In spite of all his fortune and power, Augusto would always be poorer than her, trapped in the endless poverty of a greedy, cruel heart. At the end of the day, fate made perfect amends for decades of cruelty and injustice. A mother and daughter torn apart by greed were finally reunited for good. Lucy let go of her past pain and regained her dream of becoming a teacher, determined to build a meaningful life with her own hard work instead of relying on inherited wealth. This story reminds us all that life is full of unexpected twists. The smallest, most vulnerable moments, like a desperate plea for leftover food, can hold the greatest miracles. True dignity never comes from luxury or status. It lives in the kindness we give and the goodness we keep in our hearts, even when the world is cruel to us.